Let's Cover That podcast is brought to you by CM&F Group, professional liability services for over 200 healthcare professions. Visit our website at cmfgroup.com/podcast for more info.
Hey everybody, this is Will Sullivan with Let's Cover That with another great episode with my co-host
Antonina Agruza. And today we have with us Steve Hendrick, partner with Curi Advisory and founder and former CEO of Arrowlytics. Steve, it's a pleasure to have you on our podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So Steve, can you tell us about your role in healthcare, what led you there, and how you found yourself around Curi Advisory?
That's a great question because my degree is in computer engineering. And when I got out of college, I totally fell into healthcare by accident. Went to work for a vendor who made physician practice management, scheduling, billing, and EMR software. And so that's what got me into healthcare. Started in Richmond, Virginia, took a promotion to transfer out to Dallas. The company was based in Raleigh, North Carolina. It was called Medic Computer Systems. They were growing west, so I went west with them. And then during my time in Dallas, I left and went to work for various physician organizations, whether it be an independent physician group or an IPA, an Independent Practice Association, a network, and that's what got me into healthcare.
Yeah, so Steve, kind of fast forward us to your kind of transition from that background into the company that you co-founded, Arrowlytics.
Sure. So once I went to work in various stages of healthcare, it started in technology, and then it went into operations. I took on a broad operations role, and then into executive management. I was with a couple of startups during this time. I decided to get off the road and took a job with a newly formed orthopedic group in the Charlotte, North Carolina market. It was two very old, well-established orthopedic practices that merged. Literally, the Hatfields and the McCoys got together, and they needed some more experienced management to come in and help run the combined group. It was during that time, one of the things that we identified that we needed to do, myself and the new CFO that came in right after me, is we needed to get the physicians making data-driven decisions rather than emotion-driven decisions. And because these two groups have been competing forever, we needed to get them to put the swords down and focus on the business. And in order to do that, we had to develop key performance indicators and start tracking those. And we did it manually, and it became too big, too laborious to track manually. So we went to market looking for a platform. We couldn't find a data analytic platform out there. There were several niche players, but nothing that was a daily operational dashboard. So out of necessity, they say necessity is the mother of all invention. We developed one internally, not because we wanted to be in the business of, but just to run the group. And so we leveraged that platform to grow the group from 48 surgeons to up to 160 surgeons. Along the way, we were approached by other groups about how we did things, how we made our decisions, our governance, how we managed our growth. And when they found out about the platform, they always ask, what's the vendor? Who's the vendor? What's the salesperson's name? And so we were getting interest from groups. And we realized that we were never going to get finished building the platform, and the expense was going through the practice overhead. So we decided to commercialize the platform. We got some outside advisors who helped us formulate a business plan and ultimately created Arrowlytics, the company, in 2015. And I slid over from being the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Information Officer at Ortho Carolina. I slid over to become the CEO of Arrowlytics. When we launched the company, we had to do a capital raise to fund our growth. And rather than go the VC or PE route, we decided to go with strategic capital partners One of the two strategic capital partners that we went with was Curi, because we had used them for several years on the MPL side, on the medical malpractice side, and they were very innovative and always bringing new ideas to us to try. And so we thought they would be a great partner. Their business model is dependent upon working with independent physician groups, or physician groups that are owned by PE organizations. That's their focus. And so anything we could do to help practices be successful was obviously their motivation. So, we had our typical startup scenario. You kind of hear about the pivots required in a startup, and we lived through them, and very proud to say that we made it, right? A lot of companies don't make it past the first couple of years. And so over the next 7 years, we continued to grow and evolve the company. We moved our platform to the cloud, turned it into a software as a service, and started selling it to other physician groups. Our model is a software as a service model. And so it's a multi-year contracts. When our first wave of clients came up for renewal, we were like, hey, we better check and see how they're doing. Let's make sure they're going to renew. Well, imagine our surprise. Some of our early clients, their key performance indicators had not moved at all. They were not acting on the data. So that obviously caused a concern. And so we went around, kind of paused being in build a company mode, and went around and revisited and spent some time with our clients. And we learned that there was really the reasons they weren't acting, the ones that weren't acting, the reasons they weren't largely fell into two categories. Either one, the management in place had kind of grown up in the practice, or they had reached the Peter principle had kicked in a couple of positions ago, and they just truly had been promoted or taken on responsibility beyond what they had experience with, and they just didn't know what to do with the data. The other camp was they had good management, but they were stretched so thin that the management team, though they knew what to do, they didn't have capacity or time to do it. So both of those things led us to create a consulting division. And again, we're not out trying to compete with the thousands of consulting firms that are out there, but we focus only on our clients if they need help. And it is really just to help them act on that data and get the benefit of the platform. And so that got us into the consulting space. Fast forward to 2020, COVID hits. Curi as a company, they have 15,000 physicians that they insure on the MPL side, and they're the trusted advisor in a lot of these groups. So they get the phone calls, whenever practices get in trouble. And so they had already been contemplating an additional diversification. They had started diversifying 10, 12 years ago. And so they acquired us to launch Curi Advisory. And it is we provide the Arrowlytics platform, and then consulting in largely two general areas: traditional practice, practice 101 consulting, and then M&A consulting. One of our other strategic partners was Optum. And so we developed a lot of M&A expertise helping them that we offer out to other groups. So that is the history and how we ended up with Curi Advisory.
It's really cool, Steve, that one of the things you highlight is transitioning your Hatfields and McCoys from an instinctual emotional play on how to take care of a business, how to operate in a smaller market and compete, to actually driving through analytics. That's an amazing kind of shift. And I would imagine that's the type of shift that gives the physician practices the opportunity to decide what their future really is. If they have the analytics and they have consulting services to actually make decisions and make moves, you have the opportunity to go out to market if you want to do M&A activity, if you want to stay independent, if you want to kind of interact with a new partner, capital or otherwise. It gives them that autonomy and capability. So, when you when you look at that, and you look at like the overall landscape with physicians, what is it to your perspective, like specifically, like day to day, what is the analytic platform doing? You're getting more patients in the door, making sure those
Sure.
those schedules are full. Kind of what does that kind of look like in just like
Right.
a quick snippet?
Absolutely. Our platform and our focus is top line revenue growth. It is not trying to shrink your way to greatness by just. So what we do is we help groups get their online digital map built so that we're built on the Google platform. We're a certified Google partner. So we know the algorithms that Google uses in their local search, and those change constantly. So we help practices get their Google map built. We then drive volume by surveying the patients as they come in, as well as connecting into all the social media platforms. So we're getting both solicited and unsolicited feedback. We help the practices with service recovery of anything that is negative, and really get their online reputations maximized. Then you can go on offense and start using consumer profiling data to identify cohorts of patients for the practice based on their specialty to attract those new patients. So the lifeblood of any practice is new patients, right? And so helping the practice attract those new patients. Then once they are patients, the other side of the platform, the online reputation management and marketing, is focused on what's going on outside the four walls of the practice. Our growth and optimization key performance indicators is focused on everything going on inside the four walls of the practice. That data we're pulling out of the practice's internal PM EMR systems and combining it with what's out in the social media world to help them identify opportunities and improve the utilization of practice assets. And by practice assets, that would be first and foremost the physician's time, any nurse practitioners, PAs, any other advanced practice professionals that the practice has, their time, any of the revenue generating clinic space, because that's one of the two biggest expenses in a practice, so making sure they're using that space, and then any ancillaries or staff, and look for that optimization and help them really leverage the assets that are inside a practice to grow that top line revenue. Those two things combined are going to put the practice in a better financial situation to give the docs the freedom to evaluate their growth options in a market.
Yeah, I know we've got another question with Antonina, but I did want to ask you something quickly about what you're saying on the optimization piece. What does it look like? When you look at access to care issues, and you're saying it's just not access to care, rural healthcare, things of that nature, but you're seeing these schedules just clearly not optimized.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've got to have more elbow room and surplus time. What is that just like on a ballpark? If you're looking at a doc group, primary care or whatever you want to kind of opine on, what's the loss of schedule? Like how much is Dr. So-and-so just sitting there waiting for a patient, reschedules and stuff?
Yep.
Is that 30, 50% of their day on average? What do you guys tick it up to?
You see it, typically it's, on the high side, it's going to be 15 to high teens of same day cancel and no shows. And so a lot of practices have visibility to no shows after the fact, but they do not have visibility to same day cancels because none of the practice management scheduling systems track that. And so for us, it's one of the first things we look at, and we work with them on techniques to get their same day cancel and no shows down underneath 10%. It needs to be in the 5 to 7 range, right? You're never going to completely eliminate it, but that is, in healthcare, that is akin to the airline industry of having planes take off with empty seats in them, right? The docs are saying, I built my schedule to see 10 patients a session or 15 patients a session. So we need to do everything we can to make sure the doc is seeing as many patients as he or she wants to see.
Incredible.
Yeah, I'm sure that's super impactful on their business. What would you say are some partnerships or maybe some big name organizations that Arrowlytics is working with that particularly excite you, or key milestones that are upcoming for the organization?
Sure. We've got several clients. I'm hesitant to name them. If anybody wants to know, we've got referenceable accounts. But I'm most excited about, obviously, we started in orthopedics, but we have over the years branched out and developed deep expertise across multiple specialties, and we're really starting to see a lot of activity in the physician acquisition or aggregator space. And so we feel part of our job to our membership of 15,000 docs that are really the owners, because Curi is a mutual company, so all the physicians that are insured own the company. So we feel an obligation to understand what's going on in the landscape and help physicians understand, hey, here's what's going on in the space. These companies, they're backed by PE, they're acquiring practices. Here are the pros and cons. Some of these companies are not acquiring. They have come out with a new model that is more of a joint venture upside only. So the docs don't have to give up control and sell the practice, but they can get access to some growth capital and some expertise to help them grow. So there's a couple of different models. And so we have been vetting these various firms and trying to identify the ones who are really not looking to add any value. They call them stackers. They're just buying dots on a map with no strategy or no value add other than financial engineering to roll it up and flip it. Obviously we would try to prefer any of our groups, if they're going to partner with somebody that's going to bring a better value prop and some expertise. And so that's part of what we're doing. And we're actually working with some of these companies. I'm definitely not at liberty to share those, but there are 4 different national aggregators, or whether it be an acquisition model or a partnership model, that we're doing a lot of work with. So that is, that's a lot of our focus. And another big area of our focus is developing a proactive risk mitigation model. And this is leveraging the data that we have to identify the physicians who are at risk for potential lawsuits. And there's a series of things that we do, and the data that we have access to, that we work with the practice to create a little bit of an early warning system of, hey, here are the patients that are using incendiary language. We're not saying if they use these terms that they're going to file a suit, but it's certainly language that patients who have litigious patients in the past have used. And so we want to put a focus on it, help the practices identify and really prioritize that service recovery. And then if you have any trends at a particular location is getting a lot of these complaints, or a particular doctor, he or she is getting a lot of complaints, then you know where to go focus and do some more training, again, to bend that risk curve. So those are some of the big things that we're working on that we're super excited about.
Yeah, Steve, it's amazing what you guys are doing, especially in the physician market, not only to boost those businesses, but also give docs more of the power to make decisions, more self-determination and access to care. It's just a really cool business model that you guys are doing. Congrats on joining up with Curi and creating Curi Advisory. And just thank you so much for hopping on the podcast with us.
I really appreciate it.
That's another episode. Let's cover that, guys. Thanks so much.